Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello. Greetings and salutations. My name is Malcolm. This is my colleague Brett. And we are here to talk about the history of Miami, specifically around the Miami River, the base of the Miami River. And we're going to be covering about 10,000 years of history. We're going to be going from 8000 BCE to 1926 CE. This was a typo. I fixed it before. So now, for those of you who have not been made aware, we've recently switched over from AD, right, and BC to BCE, before the Common Era, and CE, the Common Era. So we are currently in the Common Era. So 8,000 years ago, right? So let's see real quick, topics of discussion, history. Okay, so I said we're starting from 8000 BCE to 1926 CE. Here we are in 1986. Now Malcolm, I thought you said that you were going to start earlier in 8000 BCE to 26. That's not even in our window. Why are you going to 1986? Well, it's what I like to call a plot device. Now, in 1986 in Palmetto Bay, archaeologists discovered by the Deering Bay, that was incidental, they found a sinkhole, and in the sinkhole they discovered a lot of things. Now let's put a little perspective on 1986 and what we understood about how long people had been living in Miami, in the Miami area. So in 1986 it was widely believed that people had only inhabited Miami for about 2,000 years, 2,000, 3,000 years. That's the furthest back we could date. But when they discovered this sinkhole, they found the remains of dire wolves, they found the remains of camels, of woolly mammoths. And most interesting, I think, is that they found they found human remains that dated 10,000 years. So they discovered at this moment that no, people haven't been living in Miami for just 2,000 years. People have been living in the Miami area for 10,000 years. So, what does Miami look like 10,000 years ago, where woolly mammoths are around dire wolves? So let's take a look at Florida 10,000 years ago. Mamma mia, look how much larger it was, right? Much larger. And you can see that the ocean levels, right, have risen, and the high areas of what was Florida, right, remained, while the rest of it was submerged. And Miami was not a coastal town. Far from it. It was far from the coast. So let's hone in a little bit. Who are the people who have been living here for 10,000 years? Now, these people don't have their own histories written. They don't have oral histories in existence because, for all intents and purposes, they are extinct. Now, what we now identify as the Tequesta, which is a group that resided within here, were a group of Indians, Native Americans, different from Native Americans in the northern regions, where these folks were primarily Caribbean. They were from the Caribbean islands and descended from those folks. So these are the Tequesta. Now, Malcolm, how do we know they're the Tequesta? Right? We know they were the Tequesta because we have some flimsy sources, and our sources are primarily the Spanish, right? Because the Spanish told us all about the Tequesta. Now let's hone in. Now this is the base of the Miami River, right over here. Okay, so this is very important to our story. Alright, so right here you have the Miami River, just a beautiful subtropic forest, untouched, just beautiful, bleeding out into Biscayne Bay. And beyond Biscayne Bay, you have Miami Beach, and here you have downtown Miami, and here you have Brickell. Miami River, you go up and you hit the Everglades. So archaeologists discovered the Miami Circle. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. Now, the people who found this circle, the Miami Circle, were commercial archaeologists. Now, commercial archaeologists are folks who, if somebody wants to build a building in Miami, they have to get it checked out and certified that there's nothing of importance when it comes to indigenous folks and burial grounds and whatnot, and new ordinances have been put in place. So they wanted to put a building up, and the building had been demolished, and this is when they discovered it. They demolished the building to build a new one. And here's a septic tank from the building when they demolished it. And here we have post holes, right? So let's take a look at a super cool diagram. Alright, so archaeology is kind of a lot of a guessing game. It's very certified, but it's guessing. You see a rock and you call it an arrow. But there's a science to it. So, okay, over here we have post holes, and they made a circle, and others had been discovered after they found this one. This is like 10 years ago they found this. 10 fucking years ago they found this. And it was then realized that specifically at the base of the Miami River, people had been living there consistently for 2,000 years. 2,000 years, people living at the base of the Miami River. You think about how old this country is. So the post holes, you would have the posts go into it, you would be thatched with palmetto, and you have something really interesting over here, a really sort of interesting architectural feature. You see that there were post holes here, and it would allow for the thatch and the palmetto to come out here, and what remains is a sort of semicircle sunroof, which is a really, really neat thing. And when we think about Miami architecture, we tend to think about 1890s onward. But here we are 2,000 years ago. Now here are some artistic renderings of what the Miami River looked like. So this is the north bank of the Miami River. If you go out through here, that's Biscayne Bay, and then you have Miami Beach. And right here, this is downtown Miami, Flagler. You're driving down Flagler, you hit Biscayne, and you go down that way, it's Bayfront Park. And on the other side, you have the bridge with the monument to the Tequesta, bridging the north and the south end of the Miami River. And on the south end, you have where Brickell is now. Another rendering, again, the north bank of the river, down the river, into the Everglades. You go through, it bleeds out to Biscayne Bay, across the bay, the Mangrove Island, Miami Beach. Here comes Pedro Menendez. Pedro Menendez comes to Florida. Spain now owns Florida, just does. And here's Pedro Menendez meeting with the chief of the Tequesta. And this piece of art was to commemorate this meeting, how beautiful this meeting was. But it wasn't. It wasn't a beautiful meeting at all. Not nice what happened after that. See, the Spanish liked to gentrify, colonize certain places. And they would do so by setting up little McDonald's, missionaries, all over Florida. And when they had the missions, they hoped that civilization would pop from these hubs of Christianity. But the Tequesta didn't take to it, and other settlements in Florida did much better. St. Augustine, the first city in the United States, but not Miami. It was hot. There were fucking mosquitoes everywhere. The humidity. There was nobody fucking around. Nobody. So they left. And then fucking England comes in, and England owns Florida. And they break it up into West Florida and East Florida. And then Biscayne Bay, they decided to call the Gulf of Sandwich. Right? Not a very pretty name for a pretty bay, right? So The Spanish, or the English now, are trying to colonize Miami. So what they do is, instead of missionaries, they say to all the wealthy folk in England, hey, you can get a bunch of free fucking land in Florida. You just have to knock all the trees down and build us a couple fucking buildings. And then it's yours for free. Do you want it? And then the English said, fuck no, I don't want that. It's hot, the mosquitoes. And the fucking humidity, and there's nobody around. So the Spanish come back, and the Spanish own Florida, and they're like, let's try it again. Let's open a Chipotle, let's open another mission. And at the mission, they try, and the Tequesta, by this point, had been wiped out, not by physical violence. There wasn't much physical violence between the Spanish and the Tequesta. There were other kinds of disease rampant. What was once a nation of Indian people, loosely connected with thousands of years of culture and heritage, they were gone. When the Florida left the hands of the Spanish and became property of the Americans, the Spanish left to Cuba. Cuba was doing so fucking well, what they were doing over there in Cuba. They loved what they were doing in Cuba. And the 47 or some upsetting number like that remaining Tequesta went to Cuba. And culturally they're gone. There's no written history. Their monuments have been destroyed time and time again for this big fucking shiny building. Right? But now the United States owns Florida. And look, they made a nice seal to tell us what happened. Right? Us, progress, we march into Florida. Us, progress. They're so happy we're here. The palmetto, the subtropic background. But what you really see is the industrialist greed, genocide crawling in. And that's the last one. She's the last one. Okay, so the US are like, okay, let's try. Nobody's been able to settle Miami. Let's do it. We get some whoop-de-doo kind of people who really want to come in and settle Miami. And it has been tried and failed time and time again. 4 different attempts to settle Miami over hundreds of years, and it failed. But then finally, we have a couple settlers, right? So here's what we have: a Coontie farm. Now Coontie was a cash crop at the time. I think I have a slide of it at some point. And these folks were called homesteaders. Now people who were coming down here, nobody owned the land, and the United States wanted to get people to come and build, right? Because it was wilderness, nobody owned it. Nobody owned it. So they get these folks to come in, and then they come in, and they build these things. They're homesteaders. They settle the land, and they get it for free. This is what they lived in. This is what you call a cracker home or a dog trot home. Very interesting, unique to South Florida's architectural heritage. Really, Florida too, in general, Central Florida. What you have is a breezeway, right? You have this wood-frame vernacular home. You have a breezeway, and then you have to the right one room, and it goes out here too. So you have an entrance from the front to the back, blows in because it's so fucking hot. So you sleep in here, and then you hang out in here. This is the fancy one with the kitchen and the bath, where you hang out. It's where you cook. There's nothing differentiating, and you have an arcaded porch. A typical homestead. Right here's an artistic rendering. You can see the Miami-Dade /pine, Dade County pine, extinct. Bye-bye. There's a couple plots left, and I think they're going to build a Walmart on one. Nobody owns it. So then, things are going good. And I've got like 10,000 years more. Look at this. Look at mama fucking me. Look at this. Look at this.